Most of us carry questions we never say out loud. Questions about loss, identity, contradictions, and what it means to be human. This podcast is a place to sit with these questions without rushing towards answers. I'm Aya Karuni, and this is You and Aya. This episode is sponsored by Carbon Coffee Lounge on 33rd and A in Lincoln, Nebraska. All right, today we have Dr. Ron Briel. Dr. Ron is a well of knowledge. He is a prehistorian in anthropology, archaeology, and earth science. He takes us back millions of years ago to the human experience. Today, we know what we are, but what if we're really not who we think we are? Are we religious? Are we political? What are we? But we start with the apes with Ron. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. It's kind of an expander of like, how important is history to us? And are we losing history? How important is it for us to understand where we truly come from and how we're here today, given everything? So yeah, Ron takes us on a very interesting journey, full of knowledge. It was really hard to keep up with him because he spoke about things I have no idea what they are, but they're so cool, they're so interesting, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. So to be continued, and of course, I have to say this. Please like this and subscribe it or share it with your homies. Peace. Today, we have Dr. Ron Briel with us today. Ron, how are you?
I'm doing well, I hope.
I hope so too. I'm so glad that you decided to be part of this podcast. I'm really excited to get the session started.
I want your audience to know that I'm not a media person. This is kind of the first time I've ever done anything
You're
like
doing
this.
Great. This is awesome. Just be yourself and we're going to have a fun conversation.
Okay, good.
Now, okay, so we all want to know, starting off, who is Ron?
Ron is, and I kind of came up with this term. I mean, I guess I call myself a prehistorian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a researcher, writer with advanced degrees in earth science, history, anthropology, which includes archaeology. And I've never done field work in those things. I always fantasized about that, but I certainly do a lot of research and study of those who do field work. And I've always been fascinated with the human story. Well, think about it. Think of the story of this species. I mean, we began at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. Scrounging and scavenging for whatever we can eat, which is not that much different from other simians. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, although it took a while, 6 million years later, here we are in charge of the food chain. Mm-hmm. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. It's almost as if we own it. Quite a transit, as it were. So, and I've been interested in this subject going way back. Even when I was down on the farm, I used to try to create costumes, kind of like what Amber likes to do, with huge old iron lids as shields and all this kind of thing. So I used to get into that kind of stuff. Okay. I built a replica of the Roman Empire in snow on the roof of a building once.
Nice.
Huge building in the middle of a snowstorm. But anyway, I've as you can see, I've written a couple of books on this.
Yes,
this matter.
You got your books. How many books? Because I know I already have 4.
The bottom was the 4th one. It's a quest for the origins of the genus Homo.
Okay, so let's redirect. So really tell us, like, what is this passion? Where did this passion of you looking back into history? We started at the bottom of the food chain, and now here we are. We're like the superior species. Why?
Yeah,
what happened?
That's the whole story. story that is utterly amazing. That's what I've tried to find out, what I've tried to piece together. How and why did this happen? And you come up with some interesting concepts and ideas. And I was do I get to do my pet peeve thing first?
Sure.
Well, we'll plunge into all that other stuff after I get my pet peeves off the table, so to speak.
do it.
I want to get that out there because there's some people out there who might need to hear this. Educators
Go
or
for
people
it.
in charge of an educational program or school or whatever. My biggest pet peeve is the way in which we teach prehistory. Problem is, we don't teach it. That is, anything that's historical, regardless of what profession, whether it's anthropology, even anthropology, or history per se, everything is so focused on specific geopolitical, cultural units with nations in particular. It's U.S. history, the Chinese history, Russian history. Oh, once in a while you get Latin American history. Oh boy, don't branch out too much. Or African history. Actually, those are probably amongst the best. Because they aren't obsessed with individual African countries per se, so you get some kind of a broad-based interconnection between people. It's almost as if some of these courses are like, well, we teach about American history. We don't teach about human history. We aren't humans. We're Americans. We aren't humans. We're Russians. We aren't humans. We're Chinese. It's too parochial. It's too limited temporally. It's too limited in terms of the specificity and specifics that ignore the fact that we're one species.
The human experience, again, we're all the same.
There's no place for the human experience. Unless you talk about some writer or literary person who was part of that culture, but that's that's not a substitute for it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, Western Civ is fine, Eastern Civ is fine, but once again, it's limited to what is unique about that civilization. Sorry,
You're okay.
I get my hands
You're
going
good.
sometimes.
You're good.
I start waving around. And in Eastern Civs, the same type of thing. Yeah, it's broadened out a little bit. It goes a little further back in time, but still it's limited to what's unique to that group of people. It's still a that rather than everybody.
Okay.
And what we overlook in our entire educational system, I don't know about other countries. I don't know if maybe in Europe there is a course in human history or prehistory or something like that. But there's a need for it because we never, we are a product of history ourselves as beings. We didn't just suddenly appear. Maybe that's the problem with the whole creation story.
Okay.
We just assume, well, God took care of all that. He just came down and created us, and that's it. Well, we all know that's now not how it happened. We too are a product of history and development through time, just as all other living things are a product of history and development through time. And we all come from the same natural world, even though we don't believe that necessarily because we're so much better than everything else, We're from God, and the other beings aren't. That's that sort of a perspective.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's important to have some grounding educationally in the fact that we are one species, and that there is a whole sequence of development that is unique to something like human history, prehistory, that isn't going to be covered in those other national and cultural histories because they're focused on the things that are unique to them, and they don't include the undergirding developmental, bioevolutionary, biocultural evolutionary topics that go back not just thousands of years, but millions of years.
So the pet peeve is, why are we focusing on the American or the European history? We
Yeah.
want the real human
Yeah,
history.
it's
So,
this absurdity that we're not humans, we're Americans.
okay, so,
Okay. Or it's almost like we're all, if someone were to say, I'm not American, I'm a Nebraskan. We're mixing up our identities here, and we're losing sight of the ultimate identity of all. We're humans.
yeah. So take us through the evolution of humans. I know sometimes we talk about it, and you mentioned something as small as food, how food was able to give us the brains that we have right now, how we came up with culture, how important that culture is throughout the years. You wanna start with that?
I could branch off onto that right away, I guess. I think the fact that we went through an aquatic phase is important. We began incorporating things that no other primate or simian ever dealt with: fish, shellfish, tubers like arrow plants, oftentimes associated with water or waterside phenomenon. And so I'm talking now about when we reach the point where, you see, there's a whole transition that I need a whole background here that I have to get into to make it understandable how
Go
our
for it.
version of the simian world branched off into an aquatic sort of background. Tubers are incredibly important. Whether it's jicamas, potatoes, arrow plants, many like many flowers, such as irises. For example, if we run out of, if the grocery store is all closed because of the high prices, I can go out at either front yard or backyard and start hacking away at my irises.
Okay.
Because have you ever looked at the roots of an iris? Yeah, that's a potato.
Oh, okay. I
It's a
had no
potato.
I had no
I
idea.
don't know what they taste like, but you could cook them and you could
For
eat
real.
them. Yeah, for real. And it'd be a great meal. I don't know
Wow.
what it tastes like, but I mean,
I
you
love
could probably put
potatoes. I'm
some
gonna
salt
switch
on it
to
or pepper or
irises.
something.
Okay, so I started with that. Okay, so
I guess I started with that in the sense that at a certain stage of simian evolution and development, about 7.5 million years ago, there's a branch of the simians, a suborder that branched off into a different way of life in response to climatological circumstances. And once again, that whole background needs to be defined, and they became aquatically oriented. And this guy right here, Peter Rice Evans,
okay.
you can take a look at that one, the
Nice.
waterside ape, has documented the bioevolutionary adaptations that we underwent as a response of having to become aquatic apes.
Okay.
It was either that or go extinct. Now, where did this happen? Well, that might be the biggest shocker of all for those who haven't studied this stuff. These things began, they now think, and this is within recently over the last 10 years, in the Circum-Aegean, Balkan area, Anatolia, possibly the Levant, including where you come from, possibly the Nile Delta.
Okay.
In that area, but I think most heavily in the Aegean and Anatolia and the Balkans, they found the skeletal remains of simians there dating back to about 7 million years. Grecopithecus, Oranopithecus macedonius in Macedonia, that seem to be bipedal. They have teeth that are very much thick enamel, which means they're not eating soft fruits, they're eating tough tubers, reeds, wild rice, uh, tough grains, a variety, maybe shellfish.
Yeah.
Who knows? So there was a transition there that occurs about 7 million years ago, and that these are probably the first hominins. Now, there's a lot of those skeletal remains are very incomplete. However, around Lake Chad in Africa, and keep in mind there's these beings were connecting. In those days, you could literally swim or boat from where they were in the Aegean all the way to Lake Chad in Africa. Maybe a little transition here and there. There's no Sahara.
Okay.
It's like Nebraska or Kansas, grassland, open grassland, kind of like the Serengeti. And that was typical of most of that part of Africa. But anyway, in Lake Chad, they found the remains, I think, of about 17. They call the species Sahelanthropus.
Okay.
And several complete skeletons. That's amazing. You hardly ever find that.
Yeah.
And what they're finding is that these beings were very similar to those to the Grecopithecus and the Macedonius remains, which was very incomplete. But in the Greek remains, they find that the portal that it is the conduit for connecting the nerves of the spinal column with the brainstem. In both cases, Grecopithecus and Sahelanthropus, is identical, and it's identical to the way it's attached to us today.
Wow.
The difference is, between us and say a bonobo or a chimpanzee, is that their brainstem is attached way to the back of the skull, which indicates not bipedal, quadrupedal. Whereas with ours and Sahelanthropus 6-some million years ago and Grecopithecus, here's the skull, it's underneath right in the middle, like straight up and down.
Okay.
And that's an indication of bipedality. They've also found that the legs of the Sahelanthropus were much longer than a typical simian of that day and age, and that the arms were perhaps about the same length, but that's very different from other simians of that day and age as well. And there's a certain notch that they're finding in the skeletal remains of the femur, where it's attached to the pelvis, which indicates I'm not on top of the anatomy the way a physical anthropologist would be, but that notch indicates that signifies a bipedality as well.
What does that mean?
That they could walk upright. Bi instead of quad.
Interesting.
The quad is 4, bi is 2.
Okay.
So there's no question they were bipedal. They probably could get down on all fours to some extent, because until about 3 or 4 million years ago, you still had that aspect. And once again, the aquatic adaptation made a change there, whereby it became much more efficient to have longer legs and short arms if you're going to be in water. You didn't at that point. You didn't need the long arms because you weren't arboreal anymore, and you need the long legs. Once again, this is part of the evolutionary developmental process associated with adapting to the physiological response and adaptation to a change in environment, and we went from being arboreal to being aquatic.
And what was the major thing about that?
Why did that occur? Well, once again, we got to do that way back thing that I maybe what I do is just to take you back 20 million years.
Okay.
And you might ask, but Ron, where 20 million years ago?
Yeah.
Wherever there are apes, we're going to go. But
The
where are
apes, your
there
favorite
apes?
topic.
Yes, but
Yes.
where are there? This is back to the Miocene.
Mm.
And but where 20 million years ago? Well, I wish I had a giant map
Okay.
of the old world. Africa,
Let's pretend there is a giant
Europe,
map right now.
Asia.
Okay.
And it had gotten to the point by then that India is pretty much where it is now.
Mm-hmm.
The Levant hadn't developed much yet. It was still a lot of pathways between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, and of course the Straits of Gibraltar weren't as narrow, and it was wider. It was an easier flow. But anyway, if you put a marker on your index finger, got the map laid out there,
Okay.
put a marker on your thumb, and go like this, and draw it all the way across from Iberia through the Mediterranean, through the Levant, through the Middle East, through India, through Southeast Asia, on into Indonesia. And you're about like 1,000 miles to the north into Central Europe, 1,000 miles south into Africa, and draw that all the way across. You would probably intercept about 90 to 95% of where apes were in that day and age. And keep in mind, these are the distant ancestors of current apes and us. And they think they might have identified the specific common ancestor last fall in Egypt, in Qattara. That's where Rommel ran into problem with his tanks in his effort to take Egypt. It's quicksand. But quicksand is an indication.
So Egypt
once
or
a Playa Lake there in Egypt. Yeah.
So it is in Egypt.
It is Egypt. And anyway, they found a common ancestor there that I mean, a being that might have been a common ancestor to all simians, because it has certain similarities to simians that you find in, say, Hungary, the Czech Republic, southern Germany, and similarities to other apes that you're finding in Arabia and Iberia. So maybe that's a common answer. But anyway, this whole area was ape central. It was global. It was a world that was just seemingly made for them. It was a great ape frontier. It was a paradise for these beings. It wasn't heavy rainforest or anything like that. At that point in time, apes weren't rainforest animals at all. They lived in a complex environment with many forests, some rainforest, some savanna, some lakes, some grassland, some open woodland, and they wandered around, and they could eat they were pretty omnivorous to begin with. It was later that you get specializations like gorillas, chimpanzees, pongos, gibbons. A pongo is an orangutan. Their real name is Pongo. And you got your Barbary apes, which really aren't apes, and you got your Japanese macaques. If you ever come across a group of Japanese macaques in one of these outdoor zoos, you go and see them. They're awesome. I just love them. They're crazier than hell. They're just like me. But anyway, I love those creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, they had I don't want to get off on that.
Okay,
I guess I better get going.
Okay, so the apes that we started there, they seemed like they were thriving, and then the question was like, so what was the turning point?
Are you a little bit surprised by the fact that Europe is part of it?
I kind of am.
Yeah, this is what they're finding. These discoveries started to be made about 20, 25 years ago, and they kept finding remains of European apes all over the place. Europe was ape central at this time. That shouldn't be too surprising, because remember the missile pit that we talked about outside of Frankfurt, going back 47 million years? They found 3 primate species at that site.
Wow.
3 different primate species. No, those were monkeys. They were not apes. But 47 million years ago, one of them they think might have been Isiomymus, which was found in many different areas of the world that far back. Isiomymus might have been a distant ancestor of the distant ancestor we talked about at Qattara. A common ancestor of certain simians and anthropoids that are pre-ape, and then apes as well, and then of course us as well.
Okay.
So anyway, okay, I said there. It's a wonderful world there. It was mild winters, warm summers. Yeah, you had some mountain ranges, but they weren't so onerous yet that they could interfere with rainfall. So it was lush, it was wet, it was warm, it was wonderful, it was diverse. They wouldn't have wanted to been in a rainforest at that point in time. They were still they were somewhat omnivorous, which is sort of a common pre-adaptation that we took and ran with millions of years later, and the other apes seem to have gotten away from as they died out, actually, and those that survived escaped to rainforest environments. Then you're trying to figure out what happened here to all this that broke this all up. Well, things were going pretty well until about 10 million years ago, when, not too surprisingly, you and I have talked about this before, plate tectonics. The Earth's climates and biota development are molded a great deal by plate tectonics and all the spin-offs that come from it. And the atmosphere itself is heavily influenced by plate tectonics.
So give us a brief of what really is a plate.
I'm trying to make it brief. The problem is it gets kind of complex. Here, just a little background here. The African plate and the sub-Asian plate have both been pushing north hard and fast for many millions of years. And what this has done is to complicate the ecological and climatological situations of everything that's in between the Asian plate and the sub-Asian plate, and the African plate and the European plate. The Mediterranean eventually is going to be crushed out of existence. Well, that's something that actually
eventually will happen.
Yeah, it actually will happen, but it happened before.
And is it like millions of years we're talking from now? Or?
I don't know. It's hard to say. They're saying some of these events could happen at any time. 6 million years ago, it did happen. Well, between 6, 7, and 8. First of all, the Arabian component of the African plate pushed north, around 9 to 8 million years ago, made contact and with great impact with the Asian plate, the southwest part of the Asian plate, and formed what is known as the Zagros Mountains. The Persian Gulf, the subduction trough, in front of that. Remember, we talked about the subduction zone one time, and I showed you a diagram how that works. That's what the Persian Gulf is. It's a subduction zone in front of a volcanic arch.
Interesting.
The Zagros Mountains are the volcanic arch. Just like the Cascade Mountains in Washington and Oregon are a volcanic arch. And Puget Sound is the subduction trough. And that's why these areas are so dangerous from an earthquake standpoint.
I see.
Yeah, these are.
So was that what it happened 6 to 8 million years ago?
That closed off the Mediterranean, what we call the Mediterranean, from the Indian Ocean. Well, it's fine yet. Then, 6 million years ago, you have the Messinian salinity crisis, which is caused by the northwestward movement of the African plate against the Iberian component of the European plate, effectively closing what we call the Straits of Gibraltar. In a short period of time, the Straits of Gibraltar became a 250-mile wide isthmus, completely cutting the Mediterranean off from the Atlantic. Okay, so what? Well, you have to realize that throughout its history, the Mediterranean cannot survive on its own without input from major water bodies,
Mm,
such as the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean.
okay.
Uh, its evapotranspiration rate is so high that it can't survive just because, okay, it's getting water from the Nile,
Mm-hmm.
the Ebro, the Guadalquivir, the Tiber. Uh, and your rivers in Lebanon, name them for me. Okay,
Al-Quran.
oh, that's fine. I kind of lost their names, but anyway, fresh water inflow into the Mediterranean is not enough. It'll evaporate, and it
Mm,
did. It took 30,000 years. Oh,
wow.
come on, no, who's got to worry about? Well, what happened here, and I'm kind of getting way ahead of the story
Yeah.
because at that point the arboreal apes were already gone anyway.
Okay.
This is like the initial catastrophe following all that
Okay.
that led us into a transition from being mere apes to being stage one Homo sapiens. But anyway, it's incredible that we've learned from submersibles
Mm-hmm.
that have gone down, like with how they did with the Titanic. They can send those things down.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the results of the evaporation of the Mediterranean. There's salt stands precipitated by the evaporation of the Mediterranean that are 3 miles thick in like salt mountains.
Wow.
The whole sea evaporated, and it became like a bunch of dead seas, like the Dead Sea,
Gotcha.
kept evaporating until the water was literally all gone, although it would never completely have gone, because you still have those freshwater rivers,
Yeah.
although they were influenced too by the desiccation. The water rate, the Nile is your one constant here. There would have the African monsoon was fine.
Mm-hmm.
The Sahara was unaffected by this. The Indian monsoon was fine. Arabia benefited greatly from this. So you got the eastern part of the Sahara, what we call the Sahara, and Arabia were like Nebraska and Kansas. They were doing fine. The Nile was doing great. The water was flowing from the blue, from the white, from Ethiopian mountains, and it was doing very well, pouring into this increasingly empty cavity.
Mm-hmm.
And thank heavens for that, because that's how I think some of the creatures that were living there managed to survive.
Okay.
But anyway,
Okay, so back to the tectonic. Okay, apes, tectonic. Now they're gonna become aquatics.
they
So, like,
were
take us.
already. They
Okay.
were already. See, there's a transition there that we kind of missed because I didn't get to do the 20 to the.
Okay, do
there's
the.
a gradual evolutionary trend that led us to. Because the earlier tectonics had created a series of alpine orogenies.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing the Alps, the Pyrenees, the Apennines, the Balkan Mountains, the Dinaric Alps. You're seeing the Carpathians.
Okay.
You're seeing the Atlas, and I'll mention the Zagros. I didn't mention the Taurus and the Caucasus. All of that is happening. This is before the Mycenaean crisis. And these have well, in Asia, the Himalayas are a product of the similar collision between India and the big Asian plate. So what you're having across this whole ecumen is a series of massive interruptions and interceptions of the westerly rain belt, if you could call it that. It's now breaking up this lush, well-watered ecosystem, and you're creating a difference between windward and leeward. When you got a mountain range, you got prevailing westerlies, what happens? Well, you have an orographic effect, much like with the Cascades in Oregon and Washington, or the Sierras in California, or the Rockies. You got the prevailing westerlies. Storms come in, they hit the Sierras. The orographic effect is they rise, they condense, precipitation falls, the storm goes over to the leeward side, it's got nothing left.
Whoa.
So that's why Nevada is a desert and California is not. And that's why the interior of Washington and Oregon and parts of Idaho are very dry, whereas on the other side, Washington and Oregon are wetter than hell.
Yeah.
The Olympic Peninsula gets 235 inches of rain a year. Tacoma only gets 40 because it's on the other side of the Olympic Mountains. That's the orographic effect.
Man, history is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what this is doing, there's so many lowlands in Europe now that are on the leeward side of the mountains. They weren't getting rain. And temperatures, well, when you got uplift, what do you got? You got snow-capped mountains. You've got mountains where it's winter year-round. That has a cooling effect on the whole climate. So cool, dry, what does that do? Forests, subtropical Florida-like forests and temperate forests start declining. They're not getting the rain they need. And you don't you don't have the Gulf Stream yet to help out with that. That hadn't yet evolved. There was a mess between North America and South America, where those two plates are also colliding and creating disruption of the flow of ocean currents. So you're not getting the rainfall that used to be getting, because that rainfall would go from there to Europe. They weren't. The rainfall wasn't coming in the extent that it was, and where it was coming, it's being intercepted by these mountains on the windward side. Now that would help us in some respects, as I could point out as it goes along. But here's what's happening: the arboreal world is disappearing because of these climatic changes. Grasslands are coming in. Grasslands are carbon dioxide sumps. What does that do? That takes today we're cursing carbon dioxide because of global warming. They would have appreciated to have that carbon dioxide to keep it warm. So grasslands absorb carbon dioxide. That further cools the climate. Forests are disappearing. Arboreal apes are in a situation where they've got to fish or cut bait. It's either give up on your arboreal world, or you're going to die out. Most of them did die out. I'm going to point out, paleontologists have identified, I think it's 96 or 97 ape species, and the number keeps growing from the middle of the Miocene. By the end of the Miocene in Europe, there was one super species left. We call them hominins. They're the ancestors of our ancestors. The rest of them became extinct.
Oh boy!
And
are we next?
And yeah, I don't know. And could any of them have escaped? Not those apes. I don't know. We found later on, because of the Smithsonian mess, we found a way to escape. They didn't. They died out. Well, who are we in that instance? We are those few arboreal apes that somehow figured out this ain't working anymore. We've got to make a transition. Now, there may have been some sort of pre-adaptation where they gotten introduced to, say, mountain lakes or something like that, and kind of liked some good stuff there. I mean, I like the wild rice and the cattails. They're kind of tasty. And just a small proportion of them changed their life way from arboreal to aquatic over a long period of time. They're the ones that survived. And among those are our distant ancestors. The rest of them died out. We think the same process was occurring in India, but we're not exactly sure of the specific regarding species, whether it was someone from the West or whether it was native or not. But the similar processes were occurring in Southeast Asia as well. But anyway, to make a long story short, and I wanted to get to this guy right here,
Mm-hmm.
he goes into detail in terms of how we made that that would be part of what a human being is, or the kind of adaptation, evolutionary, biological, physical, biological adaptations to aquatic conditions. Part of the human story, not necessarily the mental part of it, and it was already occurring when this Messenian crisis hit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this guy,
Okay.
because it pertains directly to how we are today and what we are today biophysically. Okay, you've got this transition to a lacustrine, meaning lake-centered, small river, adaptation, and like I said, on the windward sides of these mountains, you've got those new mountain lakes now, and maybe a little colder. You can adjust, and we did adjust. And what you have here then is a species through gene drift and a change in life way and diet is adjusting from arboreal to aquatic. Well, how did that go? Well, he points out that one of the first changes is longer legs, shorter arms.
Okay.
Hands, pretty much the same, but our rear hands had to change. Our hind feet, you know how a chimpanzee is.
Yes.
Here's the front, here's the back.
Yeah.
Well, that had to change. Longer legs changes to what I call the flipper foot. It became elongated in response to the need to swim and the need to effectively wade. Imagine if your hind foot was like this. Wouldn't help much swimming. And wading, you're going to be stubbing this thing all the time. You know what this thing becomes? Big toe.
The toe.
That's the origin of that's why you have a big toe. It used to be a thumb.
Interesting.
And okay, and in addition to that, it would be great. They spent more time wading than they did swimming. Wading came first. And that hind foot now has a lot of demands on it. It can't be flat. The Barbary ape has the long foot, but it's flat. That ain't gonna work. You got to have a spring action dimension to that hind foot, or you're going to be caught sometime and you're not going to be able to get up out of the water. You need that spring, and so that's where you get the arch in the foot.
Cool.
This probably took 1.5 million to 2 million years.
I was just going to ask.
No, that's one adjustment. These are just one type of adjustment. Okay, shorter arms, longer legs. We aren't swinging from trees anymore. Okay, we got that. What else? We developed the inner ear, the outer ear, the inner nasal, and this thing, which is a splash guard. No other simians have this type of adjustment. You ever see it? You see those little bitty holes. They don't have the external ear, and they don't have and the dichotomy between that and the inner ear. These are to help with percussion. Like when you dive into water, you need to have something that protects your ears and your nose from that kind of percussion. The outer ear does, and the outer nose does that. Additional changes. Kyle Busch probably would wish that this change hadn't occurred. The paranasal sinuses. You heard of Kyle Busch. He died of it. Yeah. He'd take care of himself. I'm guilty of that too. Believe me, sinus infection is something I'm well familiar with. But anyway, the paranasal sinuses develop. No simian has that but us. It's to help with swimming long distances to lighten the skull so that it ease the impact on the neck muscles when you have to get air in as you're swimming, and you got to go like this. You got to work those neck muscles. It makes your skull a little bit lighter and makes that a little bit easier. I'll talk about the diving response in a little while. That's a little more complicated, a little bit beyond myself in terms of biophysiology, but there is a diving response.
Okay.
And interesting enough, cetaceans See, I haven't gotten to cetaceans yet. But anyway, so I better not do that. Wait
Yeah,
until I
let's.
get there.
Yes.
So anyway, see, I interconnect all these things, and I see the connection, and I got to go for it. Wait a minute, I haven't made that clear.
It is clear. This is a
Okay.
fascinating
Anyway,
conversation.
okay. Other adaptations, hair loss. It doesn't. Can you imagine a chimpanzee living out their entire life, assuming they wanted to, in water with all that body hair? You don't want that. So overall, 1.5 million years, we lost most of that body hair, and we developed sweat glands. And underneath our skin, we developed a layer of subcutaneous fat. You know who else has that? Cetaceans, porpoises, dolphins, belugas, etc., etc. They have that exact same adaptation. They have the inner ear, the outer ear, the inner nasal, the outer nasal. They have all that. No other primates on our side of the world have anything like that except us. So this is a kind of a clear indication that, yes, we went through an aquatic phase of development. But anyway, with hair loss, the sweat glands, the subcutaneous layer of fat. Why? Well, the hair loss is kind of obvious. But the sweat glands and the subcutaneous part, you might wonder, what did we develop that for? Well, as with cetaceans, we're transiting from water to air, and for us, water side, back into water. Like if you found something and you found a whole bunch of arrow plant roots and you want to go in there and you want to get those puppies, you're going to go back in the water, you're going to tear some out, you're going to get out of the water, you're going to put it down, you're going to go back in the water. And suppose we had a heavy rain the night before and some glaciers up above or whatever melted and came down in chunks and came into your lake. The temperature is going to be damn cold. And then you got a warm front coming in from the west with 80 degrees. So you're going from nearly freezing water out into 90-degree heat, back into freezing water, out into 90-degree heat. You got to have some thermoregulatory help. Apes don't have sweat glands. They don't have subcutaneous fat. What the sweat glands do, given the fact that we don't have all that hair now, and the subcutaneous fat is, and of course you have the diving response that does help here as well, but I haven't talked about that yet. You need something to leaven out all the extremes that you're doing so that you don't end up collapsing from the thermal shock. And this helps in that regard. Whereas apes don't have that problem. They don't go into water. Have you ever seen a chimpanzee lakeside? As if they could.
No.
As if they were free. That's the last thing they want to do. They hate water is for drinking. They don't bathe. They don't go into water. They'll swim to save their lives, and they're in absolute panic. Okay, diving response.
Okay, let's do diving response, and I want to talk about something else. Yeah, give us the diving response. The diving
response is a universal, autonomic response that all Homo sapiens possess, no primates possess, all cetaceans do possess, whereby the neurological system and the cardiovascular system work together to maintain heart rate homeostasis when you're diving into cold water. You can't let it's to keep the heart from panicking.
Okay.
And because it's vital in that instance that the blood flow to vital organs stay the same. And a message goes from the brainstem to the cardiovascular system. I don't know how in detail it actually works to suppress like cardiovascular panic, regardless of whether your mind is panicking or not, to maintain homeostasis. Okay. No other primate but us has it. All cetaceans have it.
So do you think that's why we think we are the top of the pyramid? Like humans, we need to take control. We're the smartest. We can swim. We can walk. We can jump.
Yeah,
we have all of these things.
Yeah,
but
it adds to our pride.
Yeah.
I think though. I think it's the cognitive revolution. That it is probably at the stem of it. Our cultural and intellectual capabilities are advanced cognitive intelligence or high cognitive intelligence. That's where that's the crowning achievement of the species, really, and that occurs, I think, as a result of the events that followed all these other events, the Messinian crisis. That's at the end of the Miocene and the beginning of the Pliocene. Should I go through some of the epochs of the Cenozoic?
Let's pause on that one for another time.
Okay, for
I
another
wanted, I
time.
wanted, okay, so I wanted to ask, because, at the beginning, you touched base on like the religion of like, this is, you think this is how we started, but there's a whole evolution behind it, being apes and kind of like becoming who we are today.
Yeah.
Do you think we want to refuse this truth of this is who we were before, like we were animals? That's why
Yes.
we shut it out and we bring this religion into
as
the
I
topic,
think
and they're like, no,
the
we are
creation
special.
stories that are part of religion, I think, very much a denial of our connection to that part of our past. It's like we don't want to admit that we came from inferior beings. That's such a distorted view of the world anyway. That doesn't mean they're inferior. Just because you have quality X and somebody else doesn't, hey, they got quality B and you don't. They can swing from limb to limb. You can't do that. Why is that not important?
Yeah.
We've decided that what we got is more important than what somebody else has got, and if you tell me I come from this being that doesn't have that, no,
Yeah.
God created me.
Yes. So, okay, so this is really interesting. So you gave us like a little brief of the history of really who we are and how we became who we are. So now looking into the future, it took millions of years to become who we are now. What's the hope in the future? Are we doomed? Do we need a do-over?
We need
What
a
is
do-over.
what is what is in store for the human race in terms of what's happening?
I need to kind of I've got a little. How much time do I have?
10 minutes?
10 minutes. Okay.
About 10 minutes.
I've been drawing connections with cetaceans. And, well, here's the thing. I was going to ask the question regarding high cognitive ability. Are we alone? 50 years ago, we
No.
was said clearly, yes. Who else would it be? Well, since then, wonderful researchers at the San Diego SeaWorld and the Sarasota Aquarium and Marine Research Center in Sarasota, Florida, and the U.S. Navy and the Russian Navy have done a lot of research on cetaceans, porpoises and the like, what I listed out before. And they're finding, to make a long story short, I know I'm trying to condense this a little bit, that they are cognitively intelligent. They have languages. They teach their languages to their children. I could call them children, I guess.
Yes, they are.
And they also sometimes teach, if their pod includes a beluga or whatever, they'll teach their young the beluga version of the language, cetacean language. All cetaceans are brothers and sisters, and they live in a world of universal peace. There's intermating between different cetacean species. The closest they get to anything like warfare is a jealousy between one male and another over a mate. And the group breaks that up real fast, and so it doesn't get anywhere. They live in a world of universal peace. They're cognitively intelligent. You can't, there's no, it's apples and oranges, who's more intelligent. There's no way of measuring it because of the differences in how they live. How would you give them a common test? They can't sit down and write on paper. They don't have hands and fingers. So, but anyway, well, here's one measure. If I could just briefly, the human brain has 7 vital layers, if I could put it that way.
Okay.
The elephant brain has the same number, interesting enough. Cetaceans have 6, we have 7. I did want to get to pachyderms too, because I think they might be a third group. I love elephants almost as much as apes.
Okay.
I am an ape, but anyway. Okay. Anyway,
Go
so
ahead, ape.
anyway, the whole cetacean thing is we're definitely not alone. We share this planet with cognitively intelligent beings. I think that include pachyderms as well, but it certainly includes cetaceans. Now, is there a particular way you want me to direct this? Your particular
Just
question you want?
yeah, just kind of like there are other intelligent species
Yes.
here, right? Like, and then the right of we are who we are because we want to compete between each other and then within other.
And unlike cetaceans, we have been unable. I think early on, when we first developed cognitive intelligence as a result of the crisis, of the Messinian crisis, and what that entailed, we had to develop ability to reach out and cooperate with other bands that were very different than we are, and yet similar enough, that we were all. There are probably many different aquatic ape species, not necessarily species, subspecies, but that we had to reach out to them, even though they're different, in order to survive in a world where you're desperately searching for water. In order to find water, I think what they had to do, apes aren't immigrators. Herding animals, grazers, bovids, rhinos are migrators. They migrate all the time. I think we got the hell out of the Mediterranean the circum-Mediterranean world by following herds of bovids, say up the banks of the Nile and major river, the Litani, the Litani River,
yes.
getting to the Euphrates, escaping into the Caucasus, getting away from these salt storms. When the Mediterranean dried up and you got these piles of salt, you get a windstorm, it carries that stuff thousands of miles, and it poisons everything. Even rivers that are hundreds of miles away get poisoned.
Wow.
You had to get away from those prevailing westerlies. That's why there's an indication of a movement of not only herds of bovids, but of our distant ancestors up the Nile, into Africa, into Ethiopia, into Kenya, into Arabia, which was still very lush and wet because of the monsoons were taking care of those areas. Lake Chad probably had a lot of those immigrating ape species from the Aegean. They couldn't have got there without their bovid brothers, so to speak.
I see.
They followed the herds. But the problem is then what? Okay, the cattle know they can smell fresh water miles away. We can't. We're not nasal oriented. We're vision oriented. That's the difference between us and cats. I think this is why cats and humans get along so well. They're visually oriented.
Okay.
Dogs are smell oriented.
I love
Bovids
cats.
are smell oriented, and anyway, we followed the bovids to the water, but who's going to get the water first? How are you going to fight 500 cattle? How are you going to? And a whole bunch of rhinos. We had to figure out how to survive against these less intelligent beings that are outnumbering us tremendously. And we had to learn to develop a powerful secondary social environment that incorporated any and all hominins. I haven't used that expression yet. We're hominins. We're members of the suborder Homininae. We're a member of the genus Homo, the species Homo sapiens. But anyway, we're talking about hominins here, small bands. In that respect, they were still like gorillas and chimpanzees, 15, 20 individuals up against 1,000 cattle. They're going to beat the crap out of us. And there's the water, and they've got it, and they're crapping it all up. They're just, the tubers are being destroyed by their hoofs. We got to get them out of at least a portion of it. How are we going to do that? Got to come up with a plan.
Okay.
And we were able to do that because we'd already reached out to these other bands, and we'd built a commonality, a common society, a social secondary environment. The only thing we lacked is, how the hell do we communicate with each other?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had to come up with an idea of creating, of like a Japanese macaque getting the attention of all the people in the band, making a hell of a fuss, jumping up and down, maybe starting a fight. But in doing so, this little shamanic creature found where he wanted to get them to do something. He knew what they wanted. They knew what he wanted. What they wanted to do. He knew, but he couldn't figure out how to organize them and show them this is what to do and how to do it. And he maybe put on an act, like a pantomime, to act out what it is we need to do to those damn bovids to get them out of our water.
I see.
And lo and behold, what came of all this became a theatrical pantomime with sign language and gestures and facial expressions and jumping up and down and putting that's the beginning of what we call language. It just had to be standardized and codified. And once you got a language, you can make a plan. You can make a plan to carry out the plan, and you can carry out the plan. And it probably involved a lot of little rocks.
Okay.
Let's get a couple of hundred guys down there and just bomb the crap out of these damn cattle and get them out of there. Damn it, our water. My kid's thirsty.
Communication started with gestures.
That'll be edited out.
Yeah, no, it's not going to. Ron, this has been an extremely fascinating conversation. Your knowledge is amazing. We can go on forever.
I had to reorganize it as I did it.
No, you did amazing.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to go back.
You did amazing. Most of the things you talk about, I feel so ignorant to it. And I feel like that's why you're such an important guest, for us to just question those things, the history.
Yeah.
So I want you, one final thing is there any questions you want us to ponder on as a closing statement?
How do we save ourselves? I mean, unlike the cetaceans, we lost the ability that we had early on to reach out to all hominins. And we've, I think, because of our increasing obsession with property and controlling land and resources and claiming it as ours. The rest of you get out, that's mine, go get your own. That kind of framework and mentality didn't exist to begin with, and that's why we were able to work together. Now we've reached a point where humanity in general can't work together anymore. We talked, greed, selfishness, I got mine, you go get yours. You don't have that in the cetacean world. Well, it's kind of a simple world. You don't have land.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question.
It's hard to hack the ocean into territories. And so there isn't that inclination, there isn't that need, so they continue to work together, protect themselves, help feed each other. Sometimes cetaceans will help us. There are the stories of dolphins that have saved the lives of humans that were drowning. By getting them up where they could get to the shore and get up.
Animals
get out of there.
Are amazing. Okay, let's pause here. Dr. Ron is asking you, how do we save ourselves? That's the question of the day.
How do we
for
do
you.
a do-over to get ourselves back to working together as humans and not being so obsessed, well, I'm an American, I'm a Russian, I'm Chinese, I'm German. And yeah, I am German, and I'm saying that.
We will leave it at that. Thank you so much for being on You and I, a podcast. Thank you for all of your support. And to be continued. This was amazing. This podcast is produced by Main Floor Media. Created, executive produced, and hosted by Aya Karuni. Creative producer, Hank Ball. Co-produced, Thais Murias-Jarcin. Set designer and production assistant, Frida Thailander. Hairstyling for me, Anastasia Jennings. Plants and floral elements provided by Grateful Growers and Carbon Coffee Lounge. Additional support provided by Dr. Ron Briel, Jim Walker, Haifa Sleiman, and Widad Sleiman. With gratitude to our title sponsor, Carbon Coffee Lounge. Thank you so much for watching this episode with Dr. Ron Briel. It has been a pleasure having this conversation with him, or a TED Talk. You be the judge. Stay tuned for next episode with Dr. Caitlin Bridges. If you are a person in academia, you definitely want to hear this episode. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next week.